Dude, you're chasing it.
Oh my.
Dude, stop chasing it.
Shut up.
Dude, stop.
You've got 4 arms and I'm owning you right now. Hello and welcome to Let's Make It 40K, and if you're new to the channel, welcome. I am Don Vincent Lafferty, and as you probably know, this is the YouTube channel that I work on with some friends for my fun Warhammer 40K projects. Today I've compiled for you a list of Warhammer 40K games that every Warhammer fan should appreciate. Some gameplay styles might not appeal to everyone, but the quality of the game is what really lands each one mentioned on the list. You'd think that there really isn't a large selection of games in 40K to choose from, but if you dig deep enough, you'll find there are actually plenty of options available. Also, rather than mentioning sequels, I'll reference an entire series with each position on the list to compile as many games as we can into a 10-spot list. And if you just so happen to be one of the team members of the developers of these games watching this, then I'm honored to have you with us for this piece. Finally, I'm not going to disparage any 40K game that I specifically disliked, primarily because I know how hard it is for game devs. They made a 40K game, and even if it didn't make me happy to play it, I certainly appreciate their effort to contribute to my hobby. Of course, there will be links in the description for you to follow up on any given selection if they are available. Alright, now let's dive right into the first Warhammer 40K game you should get your loyalist hands on, starting with Number 10, Boltgun. Get your retro Doom-style gameplay fix. I can't recommend Boltgun enough because it's my current 40K getaway when I need a break. Lots of blood, lots of guts, smooth fun gameplay, although as you can see here, I did have some frame rate issues while recording. That has nothing to do with the performance of the game. It also has a distinct retro Doom feel and a challenging experience. Definitely one for the older crowd and for those of you younger 40K gamers out there that appreciate old school games. Number 9, Shootas Blood and Teef. Get your side-scrolling action-adventure fix and your DACA fix. This one is akin to Contra, but it's funny, challenging, and fairly well-rounded. Early on, there's this awesome boss battle with an orc metal band jamming away in the background while you duke it out, which is an absolute blast. Definitely worth it for those of you who are into platformers. Shootas Blood and Teef does a great job of capturing the essence of orcs as the comic relief of 40K. Number 8, the Chaos Gate series. Get your retro Fallout RTS style gameplay fix. While I can't speak for the modern version of Chaos Gate personally, it does look good, and I definitely recommend a visit to the original by any retro gamer out there that's into 40K. Graphically dated, this game still did its job well for its time to capture the essence of Grimdark. The in-game menu has you navigate the interior of a battle barge before you drop pod in for each mission, and an early mission has you start from the interior of an old-school Thunderhawk. It plays similar to the original Fallout games, minus the open world aspect. It's an oldie but grim goodie. Number 7, Sanctus Reach and Battlesector. Get your animated tabletop simulation fix. I personally find Sanctus Reach to be the closest official game to the actual tabletop this behemoth of a franchise revolves around. By being the closest to the game, I mean that the video gameplay feels very similar to the way the gameplay feels on the real tabletop. The only downside of Sanctus Reach being your limited army selections: Guard, Wolves, Orcs, or Chaos Demons. Battlesector's inclusion here is because it is essentially the same game as far as gameplay style goes, but with different faction options. If you play the tabletop game, these games are definitely worth a visit. Number 6, the Space Hulk series. Get your Space Hulk fix, your FPS shooter fix, and your turn-based RTS fix. While there are both live-action FPS versions and turn-based strategy versions of the Space Hulk series, I'd have to say the live-action FPS would be my favorite of them. The action is intense, and you'll often find yourself overwhelmed with NIDs, as you should be. While I haven't had a chance to try out the classic tabletop Space Hulk game, from what I understand of it, the RTS does do a good job of simulating the tabletop version. Rogue Trader. Get your Baldur's Gate style gameplay fix. Rogue Trader knocked it out the park for the Warhammer community by taking a cue from one of the most significant RPGs in video game history, Baldur's Gate and Baldur's Gate 2 for PC. This time you get that isometric turn-based party combat immersed in a grand RPG, but set in the Warhammer 40k universe. It was a style of 40k game many of us have waited years for, and now that it's here, it has definitely made its mark in the canon of 40k video games. Number 4, Battlefleet Gothic. Get your Battlefleet Gothic fix? BFG leaves me torn because there is no current tabletop version available, and because I want more versions of this game that don't exist. I'd love for the devs to put together a space combat simulator with their assets that takes the battlefield beyond the X and the Y planes and adds the third dimension of the Z axis to the combat. But not in an RTS, more like an action-adventure style game. However, that's not to take away from the greatness the two current versions have. This absolutely rocks playing out as a battleship-style RTS on one level plane, as it simulates the tabletop gameplay style in one sense, but it also diffuses the sense of discombobulation you can get from renditions of space combat that have you flying all over the place. You won't get dizzy playing BFG, which is good, because as the commander of such a vast fleet of void ships, you'll need all your wits about you to lead them to victory. Number 3, the Dawn of War series. Get your RTS fix and your StarCraft style gameplay fix. Dawn of War is unquestionably one of the greatest 40k game series ever made. Build your base and your forces a la StarCraft style while working towards capturing and holding objectives. The aspect makes the gameplay style more akin to the actual tabletop gameplay, but the basic elements in the real-time combat, which allows you to issue orders while paused, draws away from that, making it its own animal. Still, it's the best way to enjoy the strategic sense of 40k in a 40k video game. And there's a good argument for whether or not this game should keep its crown at number 1. But considering the gameplay style is completely different from the next selection, the true answer to that for you, the viewer, would more often than not be relative to the style of 40k gamer you are. If you're more strategy oriented, the answer would certainly be Dawn of War. But if you're more into close-up live action combat, the next game on this list is what you should be playing. Number 2, the Space Marine series. There is no fix you could use to describe this. This is going to be action, shooter, adventure, modern graphics, engaging gameplay, probably the biggest thing to happen to 40k to date, and probably setting the bar ridiculously higher for Henry Cavill and Amazon than it already is. And it's pretty freaking high. The original Space Marine game still holds up to this day as a classic, and with what we know about the upcoming sequel, Space Marine 2 will more than likely take the crown as the greatest 40k video game of all time. With that said, you'd think that I should put this game in the number 1 spot, right? Well, yeah, it should be there, but there's a reason why it's not, and you'll understand why soon. Space Marine 2 has been delayed an entire year with not a peep of a complaint from the community, and for good reason. The anticipation is high, and we are all very easily disappointed. That delay was perfectly timed too, as Helldivers 2 dropped in the meantime, setting the bar even higher, but giving the Space Marine 2 team the opportunity to significantly improve upon the multiplayer end of the game before launch, so that it had that HD2 flavor. And ranged combat is combined as described by the devs definitely sounds promising, and visually the game leaves most of us salivating. Hive Fleet Leviathan and the Boys in Blue are definitely both blessed by the Emperor to be sanctified by this epic vision of the Imperium. Space Marine 2 is available now, so you can finally satiate your love for 40k in its greatest glory. And if you haven't played the first Space Marine game yet, grab yourself a copy to enjoy so you can truly appreciate what made this game a great series to begin with. Minute honorable mentions. These are games I'm tossing in there because there are too many for a top 10 list, and I feel like they still play an important role in the hobby, so they should at least get mentioned since they matter in the grand scheme of the world of 40k games. Fire Warrior, which is an FPS TOW game. Freeblade lets you take the helm of an Imperial Knight, and it's a rail shooter, so minimal effort to even play the game, and it's free to play as well. There's also Daka Squadron, which is an aviation simulator, and it's an art-oriented aviation simulator. Speed Freaks, which is another orc game, and this one's a racing simulator. And then there's Hired Gun, which allows you to dive into the realm of Necromunda with an FPS shooter. All great games, just too many to compile into a top 10 list. One final note that I'll add before moving on to the final game I'm going to discuss in this video is that I want to reiterate that both Dawn of War and the Space Marine series deserve the podium for the #1 spot here. While I do acknowledge this, I personally have a bias in the order of this list, which might make you think that the #1 spot here is unfairly placed. On the contrary, I do believe the nature and purpose of this video, which is to cover what I consider to be the best Warhammer 40k games you can play, does in fact work ethically as intended despite the bias. Let me explain. Number 1, my Warhammer 40k dream game. So I had this dream of making my own Warhammer 40k video game project to share with the world. You might think that that is far-fetched given my limited resources, but it's not as far beyond the realm of reality as you might think. If it were something that I can gain GW's blessing for, that is. What gives me a specific measure of confidence is that my game project has a specific feature that no other game in the world currently has. A game feature that only I and a select few can get to enjoy at the moment. It is my greatest hope that I can gain GW's approval to share this awesome new style of gameplay with you through Warhammer 40k. You guys see me taking this random object or that random object, and then we make it 40k. Well, there you have it, people. This is the biggest project that this is all leading up to. I want to make my personal 40k video game project something that you can all enjoy, and fingers crossed that with any luck, we will actually manage to get GW to be game. The Let's part has always been an invitation to you, the viewer, to participate on some level. This channel is supposed to be as much about you, the 40k community, as it is about the projects you see unfolding here. So if this works out and it actually comes to fruition beyond my own personal computer, then you'll come to discover that you'll not only be able to monitor the project's progress through the devlog on Let's Make It 40k, but you'll also be able to directly participate in the game development process in a way that's never been done before. So from the outset, when I started making my 40k video game, I really was only doing it for myself. I'm a hardcore gamer, I know what I like in my games, I know what I want in my games, and suffice it to say that what I wanted from my 40k game was simply not available at the time. So I set out to make a simple 40k video game for myself. There's no harm to Games Workshop in that, right? So I started putting some projects together, and as I tinkered around, I started to realize that what I had put together was actually fun to play around with. This kind of gave me the idea that maybe, well, just maybe, if what I had is something that people will actually appreciate, then maybe there would be a possibility that Games Workshop would be gracious enough to consider it. So with the prospect of this possibly becoming something that I could potentially share with you if GW approves, I can't discuss too many of the details about my game project outside of vague generalities. What I feel comfortable saying about it is that I do it with the notion that it will only be a private project in the long run, which maintains my passion for it. Let me put a lot of love into it. It's my own little 40k heresy baby, a bastard child of a machine spirit, hoping the Emperor gives his blessing and anoints it with holy oils. My experience exploring the development of a 40k prototype to present to GW involved a lot of exploration gameplay-wise, which contributes to my love for minigames, which is actually a major element of the project. It's one massive game in its own right, but it's also loaded with a good deal of minigames, and a number of them have their own complexity, enough to the point where they almost merit their own standalone titles. To give you an idea, of the measure of work involved with just getting a prototype ready. I've spent 3 days just preparing over 180 sprites for a single character, which has been fairly grueling and tedious, and I still have to integrate that stuff, which is even more work. It's a lot for a concept, probably the biggest project I've ever worked on in my life. In the long run, even if it remains a private project, I should in theory have one hell of a piece of personal art when it's finished, and a template for something greater that I can do it down the road. This brings me back around to the whole conversation with Games Workshop and what this game may or may not become. I don't want to look foolish to them, and I also want this to be something worth everyone's time. So I've been going full steam on this prototype for the past year, which has consumed most of my time and usually what draws me away from the channel. It takes a lot out of me, but I feel like it's worth at least the learning experience and in the end my own 40k game that I wanted in the first place. There's so many cool features to my game that I want to tell you about. The crazy things you'll be able to do, the places you'll be, the equipment you'll use, the way it complements the current array of other 40k video games and products, the unique new level of immersion not seen in games before, the elements of the Imperium that haven't been explored in games yet, and a grand tale of tragedy that starts dating all the way back to before the Heresy. But that is a conversation I have to have with Games Workshop first before I can go into any sort of great detail about it with you. It's a conversation that I've been working up towards for years now, and to be frank with you, the prospect of how it may or may not unfold is a bit nerve-wracking. To be clear, they have asked me for what I've done in the past, but it was at a time that I didn't really have it in a presentable format for them when I first inquired about the proper process. I feel like I'm really close to that point now, so hopefully there will be a productive conversation in the near future. On that note, I can't reveal too much more about my game project until I know whether or not I'll be able to make it publicly available to play in the future. If GW doesn't really want to give me the opportunity to make this happen, it would certainly be a very sad day for me, and unfortunately in that case I wouldn't be able to distribute the game publicly, only to the people who helped me work on it. But on the bright side, even if they do say no, it's not like we haven't already achieved a number of really cool things with Let's Make It 40k, like our Auspix Tactics collaborations and contributions to our Wargamer.com feature, just to name a few of our notable feats. So there will still be lots of fun content in store for the future of Let's Make It 40k, and I can at least show you guys the cool stuff that I set out to do. Either way, at the very least, I am making this game for myself, which is what I initially set out to do to begin with. And guess what? It's badass. And that's why it's number one on my list. Wish me luck, guys. Hey, thanks for watching, y'all. I appreciate it. Obviously, liking, sharing, subbing, and notification belling is also greatly appreciated. If you felt like I left any games out that deserve some love, I encourage you to mention them in the comment section. I'm glad I finally got to get some of this stuff off my chest, because now you, the viewer, understand what the hell I've been up to, and you can sure bet that there's a lot around the corner. Once again, I'm Dawn, this has been Let's Make It 40k, and I will talk to you guys later.